Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel Baird. I'm an event facilitator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. And before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 1 territory, which is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Aninawak, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, as well as the homeland of the Red River Métis. Additionally, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Worcestertown. And of course, thank you all so much for being here today for the launch of The Body Riddle, the debut novel from Sam K MacKinnon. Let's give a round of applause. And thanks to Anansi Press for publishing this book and for helping to coordinate this event tonight. So to let you know how the evening will go, immediately following my introductions, we'll invite Sam up to do a brief reading over here at the podium before being joined in conversation with our host, Coby Friesen. Let's give a round of applause for him. And immediately following that, there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. So if you do have a question tonight, just raise your hand nice and high for me to see. And then I'll come by with this wireless microphone, which is just to ensure that you're heard on tonight's live stream for the folks who are watching at home. And then I'll be back as well to review the signing procedure, but we'll get to that at the end. For now, I have the pleasure of introducing tonight's guests. Your host, Coby Friesen, is an award-winning queer filmmaker based in Winnipeg, who also happens to work at McNally Robinson Booksellers. His 3 short films, Hook Up, Cruising in Gomorrah, and Dream Life, have all played at film festivals across the country. Most notably, Cruising in Gomorrah, which was the result of the $10,000 RBC pitch competition, recently had its world premiere at the 25th Annual Gimli International Film Festival, and also won the jury prize for Best Short Film at the 40th Annual Real Pride International Film Festival. Coby is currently working on another short and his first feature. And of course, our featured guest, Sam K MacKinnon, is a queer trans writer based in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Treaty 1 territory, and the homeland of Métis Nation. Their writing has been published in Catapult, Prairie Fire, CBC, Them, and elsewhere. Sam was nominated for the John Hirsch Emerging Manitoba Writer Award in 2022. Tackling themes of queer longing, identity, and the messy beauty of reconfiguring desire on your own terms. Sam's debut novel, The Body Riddle, is a novel about Lex, a gender-fluid person whose desire shifts as they transition, throwing their long-term relationship into question. To tell us more, please join me in welcoming Sam K MacKinnon.
Thank you, Daniel, for those introductions. And I also want to thank McNally Robinson for hosting this event. The very first fiction writing class I ever took was at McNally Robinson's community classroom. So it's really wonderful to be here for the launch. I also want to thank my friend Coby for hosting the Q&A and my publisher, House of Anansi Press, and everyone here today. I'm so grateful for all your support. The reading that I'm about to do is a flashback scene with Lex and their partner Ada on video chat with Lex's best friend Tom. 2 months into the first pandemic lockdown, my hair had grown so long it was cresting the tops of my ears. I'd taken to sitting in front of our wall mirror and running my fingertips through the strands. I realized I had so many gray hairs I could no longer count them. Tears bulged on my eyelids. Somehow I'd crossed the threshold from being young to growing old without noticing it was happening. Just diet with some punky, Tom had said when I complained to him over video chat. That's not really my thing. What, you don't want to be a walking biflag like me? Tom's hair was newly streaked with electric blue, fuchsia, and purple. I twisted my lips. I don't really like to draw attention to myself. Lex, literally no one is paying attention to you right now. They're paying attention to their impending deaths and whether they're speaking moistly. Get your head out your ass. Tom waved his finger back and forth. I rolled my eyes. Even in his ribbing, Tom always knew how to make me feel better. The isolation of the early pandemic days had worsened my dysphoria. I'd had little else to do but pace and wallow over my surgery wait time. And I was in for a long wait. My surgery was unfairly categorized as elective, and elective surgeries were getting canceled to make space for COVID patients. The lack of control over even the simplest things that had brought me feelings of gender freedom like my hair was stifling. I could no longer go to the barber and get a piece of my dysphoria sliced away. I felt helpless. While I moaned to Tom, Ada popped her head out of the room she converted into her office. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Our babe is having a bit of a crisis," said Tom. I sniffed. "I am not. I'm fine. People are dying and I'm not, so I'm fine." "If not dying is your definition of fine, then we have an even bigger problem," said Tom, clicking his tongue. "I might have a solution," said Ada, turning to leave the room. I placed my forehead in my hands. I wasn't in the mood for solutions. I wanted to continue feeling sad. It was what felt normal to me, and therefore brought a sense of security. Ada returned with my electric clippers in one hand, and in the other, her phone open to a YouTube video titled "Men's Haircut Tutorial for Beginners." "You think you can do it?" Ada nodded. Suddenly, my body felt lighter, hopeful. Let me see, squeaked Tom. I tapped the camera reverse. "I want to cut Lex's hair. Not fair. The only thing entertaining me right now are people forgetting to mute themselves on Zoom." "You can watch," I said, getting up to give Ada a kiss. "Porn," said Tom. "Careful, or I'll end the call," I warned. Okay, I'll be good." I picked up my phone and brought it to the bathroom counter. Ada wrapped a towel around my shoulders and held it together with a clip. She pressed play on the tutorial, her lips squished together in concentration, hair wisping at her cheeks as she leaned in to get a closer look. I felt such fondness for her in that moment. Ada could cook, Ada could skateboard, Ada had the ingenuity to create a publicity campaign for an overflowing garbage can if she wanted to. But she was just over the side of tomboy femme that meant she never used a pair of electric clippers. "According to the video, I need to start with a higher number," Ada muttered as she snapped on the length attachment. As I watched her focus, warmth spread through my chest like the first sip of tea. We stared at each other for a moment, and I shrugged my shoulders, overwhelmed by her acts of love, her tenderness. "Get a room," said Tom. Ada jumped. "I forgot you were there." Tom cackled. "No way, that cannot happen while she's holding clippers to my scalp. Time to say goodbye, Tom." Ada got to work. I gritted my teeth and closed my eyes. When she was finished, she took a cloth and brushed the spikes of hair from my neck. She unclipped the towel from my shoulders and shook it off in the bathtub. I gazed at my reflection. There was an obvious bald square just above my ear. "Ada, what?" Ada wrung her hands. "I made a mistake, okay? Please don't be mad at me. I put the attachment too low." I ran my fingertips over the bald square. A chuckle rose from deep in my stomach. Soon, the two of us were standing with our palms on our knees, lost in a laughing fit. Ada's eyes were pinched close as joyous tears streamed out. I caught another look at the bare spot and started howling. We were reviving each other with our laughter. What else could we have done?
Beautiful words, Sam. This is awesome. I'm so excited to be chatting with you, my friend, Sam. Just to give a little context, Sam and I became friends through a creative Manitoba mentorship program. They were doing some with writing, obviously, and I was doing screenwriting, and we just got to know each other briefly, and then kind of sprinkles over the years, slowly but surely, we became really, really good friends. So I was really honored when they asked to have me host the event tonight. So thank you again. So your book, The Body Riddle, is beautiful. It's funny. It's layered. It's vulnerable. There's so much queerness in it. It's about desire. It's about evolving relationships. It's about so many things. But how did it come about for you?
I'm glad you brought up the mentorship program because it was the second book that I wrote and the first one that I'm publishing. And I think when I was writing the first book, I didn't realize it at the time, but I think I was really just getting a sense of what my artistic voice was and the kind of stories that I wanted to tell. And when I started writing the Body Riddle, I was thinking about how the narrative of transition that I was exposed to, especially online in the early mid 2010s, was one of a binary trans person who was going through very specific steps of transition and then experiencing overwhelming joy and satisfaction at the end. And what I was seeing in my community is that people who had more fluid gender identities didn't necessarily line up with that experience. And so I wanted to add more nuance to that conversation and write a story for people who were more fluid to feel less alone. And at the same time, I was interested in the afterward. So how does somebody begin to reintegrate themselves into the world once they've gone through such a massive shift in their body and in their life?
Absolutely. Is there any way that this is based on your own life, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think my perspective as a queer and trans and neurodivergent person is always going to influence the kind of stories that I want to tell. One of the big influences for this story was Winnipeg. I have said before that it's like a real Winnipeg and an imagined Winnipeg. I'm always impressed by how queer and trans people create community in the city around all sorts of interests, and I wanted to make sure that I reflected that in the novel. This like search for community and finding in places you might not expect. And then reading Detransition Baby by Tori Peters, that really opened my mind to what was possible with trans storytelling. I think she does a really excellent job at writing conversations between trans people and humor between trans people. And I think trans people are some of the funniest people that I've ever met and are very creative with humor. And so that was important to me to kind of do that in my own way in this book. And then A Midsummer Night's Dream was another inspiration. I liked the idea of the play with gender and sexuality that happens in that play, and sort of fever dream in the forest. And especially if you've already read the book, the folk fest scenes were kind of inspired by that.
Okay. What was the most challenging part of the story to write, do you think?
There were a lot of challenging moments. When I think about the editing process that I was going through before I submitted the book for the publishers, I had to go through so many drafts, and every time I did that, I was revisiting some really intense scenes. And in order to get the scenes feeling as emotionally true as I could, I felt that I had to go to those places for the characters. So I had to be Lex and be Ada and be Tom, and it was very taxing on me emotionally. I think especially when it got to draft 9, 10, 11, and I had gone through this certain scenes like so many times. So that part was very challenging, and I had to focus a lot on places where I could find joy to get out of that headspace. It's a really adorable human in the front row who always makes me smile, and she was very helpful in that process too. And then actually sending the book out on submission was really hard too. And that's because I got a lot of rejection. And when I had been working towards this goal of publishing a book for so long that I just wanted it to happen already. And I wanted people to be able to read the book and get it out there. So I relied a lot on this podcast called We Regret to Inform You, where they tell stories of artists, like famous artists who've had tons of rejection in their career, and that really helped. But yeah, I'm really happy with where it ended up, and House of Anansi has been really great to work with.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really felt that too, the balance of joy, tempered with really difficult life stuff, and that is life. So I really appreciate that you managed to put kind of the whole life experience in this book through Lex's journey. What about the most rewarding part of writing Body Riddle?
The first draft. I have learned that the first draft is the best part of the writing process for me. A writer once told me that it's like building a jet plane while you're flying it. And so in some sense that can be challenging, but it's sort of the only time that I have allowed myself to completely let go of my perfectionist tendencies when I'm writing. And that's so freeing. And I wish that I could do that in more areas in my life. Maybe there's a lesson for me to learn there. But yeah, it just feels like magic because I'm not worrying about it being good. I'm just worried about inventing a world that doesn't exist. And that's really fun. It's really fun to make things up. And then getting to the point where I finally finished a novel where it was going to print and I could no longer make any more decisions about it. That was also very freeing, like just so satisfying to be able to say it is now done.
Yeah, I can totally relate with my writing as well. It's just like that first draft is so exhilarating because you have that idea and it's like it could go anywhere and you're just following that inspiration. But then you sort of have to make choices. And the choices sometimes can be really difficult and is a process in itself.
Yeah.
That is probably the hard part, I would say. Yeah, you have to kill your darlings, as they say, and make the story work. It can't just be your like project anymore. It has to be, has to become this thing that everybody else is going to read.
And every choice feels equally important. Like I really struggle to weigh whether changing a word here and there, or changing a paragraph, or deleting a whole chapter. Like they all felt equally important to me, and maybe that's something that I will get a better sense of as I continue writing books. What to spend less time on than other things, but yeah, it's really hard to make those editorial decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Digging a little deeper, yeah, as I said, you have written this very layered and nuanced book. I wanted to sort of focus on Lex and Ada's relationship, which is quite complex. Lots full of queer joy. It's full of deep love and safety. But there's also sort of a power imbalance happening between them that is causing some friction, some tension. And I wonder if you could maybe talk about what do you think Lex is getting out of this relationship with Ada, considering all the tensions.
Yeah, I mean, Lex meets Ada at a time when they are really just beginning to understand and accept themselves as trans. And Ada is not only immediately affirming and supportive, but she sees Lex in a way that other people around Lex aren't seeing them. She sees Lex's fluidity. And so there is a bond that's created because of that. And Ada also has certain qualities that Lex really wants for themselves. She's very secure and independent. She is a cis woman and she feels completely happy within the gender she's assigned at birth. And I think that's a bit of a mystery to Lex. And at times it's kind of this mirror of how the world sees Lex, but not how Lex wants to be seen. So there's some confusion there. And then the imbalance between them, they have this fundamental incompatibility, which is something they have to work through throughout the course of the novel. But I think at the root of everything, Ada's family to Lex.
Yeah, and I really saw that sort of that idea of like how it's perceived and how they're actually being perceived, and that whole journey is like kind of worked throughout the whole novel. It's just really well done. And then there's Sadie, who's this new person in Lex's life. What attracts Lex to Sadie, and what does that say about them and who they're?
Yeah, so Lex is surprised to be attracted to Sadie. I think that Lex is attracted to Sadie for some of the same reasons that they're attracted to Ada. Sadie is also very independent and confident, but Sadie is non-binary and Lex has never felt interested in or attracted to somebody who had a fluid identity or was trans. And so seeing this person who is so secure in their identity is another moment of awe for Lex of what might be possible for them in the future. And then Sadie is also just a fun person. I mean, they have a special interest in chess, which Lex relates to, and they're fashionable, and I think Lex is attracted to them on an aesthetic basis as well. Lex is an illustrator and very into like how color shows up in the world, and Sadie dresses in like very bright colors, and Lex likes that. So yeah, there's a lot of things. And I think as Lex continues to grow and understand who they are, their attraction to Sadie deepens.
You bring up desire, gender, sexuality, all these big themes are sort of intertwined in this novel. And when one changes, the other kind of can go another way, or they're all kind of evolving at the same time. As we're reading the book, did you have characters that you felt their desires like surprised you in terms of how they started and how they began?
I always knew the arc of how Lex's desire was going to shift throughout the book. So that didn't necessarily surprise me. But one of the things that I really wanted to emphasize as it relates to gender and desire is that for some queer and trans people, gender and sexuality are these two separate entities. But for Lex, they're not. For Lex, they're very intimately related. And it is through this process of connecting with trans community, through having sex, that they begin to get a greater understanding of what their gender means to them.
How the body speaks to us is also another powerful theme within the book. We live in a day and age where we're bombarded with screens and kind of are taken out of our bodies and what our bodies are telling us at any given time. And I just thought that was interesting that this book kind of brought it back to the body and the experience of the messages that the body sends to us. And sometimes they come in the form of riddles that are confusing and we don't know what they're saying. And it's sort of this battle between your mind and your body sometimes. And first of all, I was wondering why riddles as the language of the body, and also how important do you think the body's messages are for Lex and in general?
I really liked the term riddle because it makes me think of something that's really puzzling or difficult to solve. And so Lex is going over several puzzling questions throughout the book. And they're not questions that necessarily have answers or necessarily have the same answers day to day. Because for Lex, their gender is something that is so fluid that they might feel on one day that it's different than on another day. And this fluidity can be really disorienting for them. And I think what Lex eventually comes to realize is that there is a sense of consistency in their gender, like they're searching for this consistency so they can make these decisions. But what is consistent is their inconsistency. So their ambiguity, their inconsistency, that's actually the thing that stays the same in their experience of their gender. And so when they're processing all these decisions that they have to make, they're getting a lot of influence from the outside world. And because they're such big life-changing decisions, Lex really has to shut out all the outside influence that they can and go inside themselves and sometimes just take a guess at what might be the best thing to do. And because I don't think we always know the effect of a decision we're going to make. I think sometimes you just have to make a decision and see what happens and hope that you've done all of the necessary emotional preparation that you can.
Absolutely, well said. Sort of switching gears, completely, actually. Say somebody approached you and said, I'd like to make this into a film or a TV series. How would you feel? Do you have actors in mind, directors in mind?
Are you asking? Yeah, I would love that. I'm a big fan of TV. I watch a lot of TV, and so that would be my preference, certainly. But anytime I get to see more queer and trans stories on screen, I'm always delighted. And it's great to feel like you're not alone and like there's an experience that represents you, but it's also great to see just the variety of queer and trans experiences on screen, and they are so varied. So I would just love more of that, of course. Get in touch.
Good answer. Daniel, how are we doing for time? Wow, there's a clock right there. Very nice. Okay, cool. We got a little bit.
I got you back.
Thanks, Daniel. Wondering what you're working on next.
It's in its very early stages. One thing that I'm changing with my new work is paring down the number of characters, because I did find it very challenging to figure out all of the different characters' story arcs in my book, and because there's multiple non-monogamy storylines, trying to figure out how they were all going to move through the story was incredibly complicated. So my next work is going to have much fewer characters. Hopefully that will be a little bit easier to write. And there's going to be romance, and I'm always going to be telling queer and trans stories. And then I think that's all I'll say about it, because it's so early now.
Fair. What's the last great thing that you read?
I actually today I just finished a romance book called The Romantic Agenda by Claire Can, and it's an asexual romance, and it was really great. And one of the things that I loved about it was that you don't know, like with a genre romance, you always know there's going to be a happily ever after, and you usually know within the first couple chapters who that's going to be with. But I really like it when writers kind of flip that trope and show multiple people that somebody could end up with. So it really keeps you guessing to the end book who she's going to end up with at the end.
Awesome. I think that's all the questions I have, but I thought maybe we would turn it over to the audience. If they have any questions, Daniel will be here with the mic, and he can bring me the mic.
Exactly. Who's got a question? Right back there.
Hi, Sam. I noticed that it was set during the pandemic. It was kind of an unmooring time, thinking back on it now, it's kind of unmooring. Was that a conscious choice, or was that just when you were drafting it? You're like, okay, we're all interacting over Zoom, everything's crazy now. And was that like helpful in bringing out Lex's journey in the story?
Yes. Yes. I started drafting the book, I think it was in fall, like almost end of the year, 2022. So it was very much still pandemic time. And I didn't want to write a pandemic novel. There were the scene that I read is a flashback scene during the pandemic. I wanted to write something that was set a little bit into the future. So I was kind of imagining, I was thinking that maybe it would take place in 2024 when I was writing. And I was hoping that everything would be in a much better state by that point. But it did, when I think about the flashback scenes, because the story is told non-linearly, it did affect Lex's emotional state, because I think for a lot of queer and trans people, the pandemic was really difficult because access to community was cut off in many ways. And there were a lot of people that created these amazing online communities, but it didn't replace in-person connection. And not everybody, I mean, not everybody can access in-person connection generally, but also not everybody can access online connection. So yeah, that was when I was thinking about the despair that Lex was going through, kind of in the past, the pandemic definitely had like a influence on that for sure.
Anyway, over here that I missed, you may have a question? Yeah. Hi, Sam.
Hi, Dad.
I want to ask you about your inspiration for Toast. So Toast is a restaurant that plays kind of a central role in the book.
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
That is an interesting question. So I talked before how this was the second novel I wrote, and in the first novel I wrote, there was a storyline that had to do with sourdough bread. And initially when I started writing the story, I was thinking about like connecting the two novels in some way. And I just have long thought that a restaurant where all you serve is different varieties of toast would be a very easy restaurant to run. I don't ever want to run a restaurant. I think it's very challenging, but I've worked in a lot of restaurants. So I thought like this could really simplify things. And maybe you could focus on the community gathering element more so than the food. So Toast does become this place where people come to gather, the trans group meets there, people play board games there. So yeah, it was just kind of fun. Just fun, and I thought it sounded simple.
I like, that's fantastic.
Hi, Sam.
Hi.
Can you tell us about the importance of the folk festival in the story? The Winnipeg Folk Festival, that's not in Winnipeg.
Yes. So the Folk Fest scenes happen at a time when Lex is starting to kind of come out of their shell after this period of sort of self-imposed isolation. And I wanted to create this kind of fever dream, anything could happen sort of vibe atmosphere. And I have just enjoyed the folk festival myself for so many years. So I found, and it just feels like such a pivotal part of Winnipeg culture. And so when I was thinking about representing Winnipeg in the book, it felt really important to include. But also narratively, it was a place where all the characters could gather and be in a different setting, which would mean they might be making different decisions, and maybe they're under some different influences, and that's going to affect their decisions. So it was both like using Winnipeg as an inspiration, but also as a narrative device to like kind of get all the characters out of their routine and have them do something new.
I noticed at the end of the book in the acknowledgements that you thanked the Red River, and so I was just wondering if you could expand on your experience like with the red and how it, you talked about inconsistent consistencies and like the river represents that. I hope you could expand on that, I guess.
Yeah. So I thanked the Assiniboine River because it's something that I am engaging with on a daily basis, and it just always fascinates me how much change you can expect and how much is unexpected. And it just is constantly happening day after day, year after year, no matter what else is happening in the world. I remember in early spring 2020, that was one year where they weren't able to do the skating trail on the river. And I remember walking on it, and it was all like the way that they couldn't do the trail because it froze really weird and there was like big chunks everywhere. And I remember walking and just waving to people in the apartments along the river because it was a form of connection that I felt I desperately needed at the time. But yeah, I'm just, and then there's, I like to call it Ice Trunk Day, which is the day in the spring when you see these giant chunks of ice that are just flowing down the river, and it happens for about 24, 36 hours and then it's done. And then, I don't know, I'm always seeing new animals on the river. So yeah, it's just one of those things where like, no matter what I'm going through, if I spend some time looking at the water, I feel a little bit better. And change is always happening in the natural world, as much as I might like to resist it sometimes.
We got a question over here as well.
Hi, Bryce.
Sam, you were mentioning all of the drafts, the multiple drafts you had, the multiple characters, the story arcs. How does your brain function with all of that happening, that web and entangling in with you? Like, how do you function on a day-to-day basis when you're trying to step out of the writing process? Like, is it just constantly churning, and how do you turn that off or ignore it, or just go through a day when all of this stuff is swirling?
Yeah, I would love to learn how to do that. I was mentioning earlier that there's some things in my life that I've really grown to rely on in terms of getting out of the writing headspace, because I can't obsessively think about it, especially if I'm feeling blocked at some point. The cure for writer's block is to stop writing and to stop thinking about writing. I love spending time with my loved ones. The kids that I have in my life are so hilarious, and they're always making me laugh. And so that helps me get out of that headspace. And then, I often ideas pop into my head right before I'm about to fall asleep. That's a problem. I'm always like lying there thinking, oh, this is great, but you need to sleep. Oh, but you're gonna forget it in the morning, and then I have to write it down, and then that helps. But for this book, I had index cards that I wrote all the major scenes on, and then I was kind of shuffling them around on my wall. So I think having that visual aid helped as well to keep everything organized.
Hi, Sam. Congratulations on the publication of it. It's a really interesting book.
Thank you.
I'm hardly wait to read it. I haven't read it yet, but from the little bits I know about it, I am fascinated by the title. If anything draws you into a book, it's the cover and the title. So amazing. When in the writing process did the Body Riddle come to you? Was it the beginning, the middle, the end? Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had a working title for the first couple years as I was working on the book, and I knew it wasn't very good. I just needed something to describe it. And then once I was getting closer to the point where I knew it was almost ready to submit to publishers, I was thinking about the marketability. So I really tried to turn off that side of my brain while I was writing. And then you definitely have to think about that when you're submitting, because I wanted somebody who had never heard anything about the book to be able to be in a bookstore and see the title and see the cover and pick it up. So I just did some brainstorming, and for me that meant writing notes on my phone, writing down ideas even if I thought they were bad ideas, and pretty quickly the Body Riddle came about. And then I knew instantly that it was the one, because I thought, man, there's no answer to that question.
Congrats, Sam.
Thank you.
I haven't read the book yet. I'm really excited to, and it is going to be my choice for my book club coming up. And I was hoping you could give me a discussion point for book club that might be something interesting, because we'll all bring a discussion point. I would love to say that mine came from you.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good question. Let me think for a second. One thing that I like to talk about in my book club is whether certain plot points or certain characters felt believable, and maybe what drew you to a certain character. Like, because there's so many kind of romantic storylines that happen in the book with so many different characters, was there one that stood out, and why? Thank you, Charlie.
Congratulations, Sam. I'm gonna stray away from the writing process, and I'm actually just wondering if, what do you hope people feel after reading your book?
I think that there's gonna be lots of different people who have experienced different things in their life who are reading the book. And I hope that trans people feel a sense of community. I am always looking for that myself in literature, and when I wrote it, I was thinking like a book like this doesn't exist, and I want to see it and I want to read it, and so I should write it. So I hope people feel a sense of community. I hope they feel that some of the like feelings that Lex has and goes through line up with some of their experiences, and also I hope that people learn something. Are able to think about gender from a different perspective that maybe they haven't thought about before. And another thing that I wanted to emphasize in the book is that there's so many different ways to transition, and that's why I included different characters who transition in different ways. So I hope that people see that as well. And yeah, I mean, the trans community always needs more love, and especially right now. So I hope that it just creates a greater sense of love.
That's beautiful. Do we have any more burning questions? Yeah, back there, okay.
Thanks. Hey, Sam. I'm curious about your understanding of the characters because obviously you want to have a little bit of realism in them, and I'm wondering, was there a point where you kind of came to realize and understand those people, to the point where you could be like frustrated with them or very impressed by what they would do?
Yeah, I thought a lot about this idea of unlikable characters and how to create human characters. And that meant making characters who made frustrating decisions and bad decisions that I wouldn't make. And so that was really important to me to show people's sense of humanity, because if somebody doesn't like a character when they're reading it, the thing that matters the most is that they can empathize with that character. So, you know, we have so many characters in different kinds of media. I've been watching Mad Men and thinking about Don Draper. I had never seen it before, so I'm quite late to it. But I was thinking about, you know, you need to really be able to empathize with the character. So I wanted to show kind of all parts of what makes humans humans. And that means messing up and making mistakes and hopefully learning something from it.
We have time for another question, if anybody has one that they've been sitting on, just before we move to the signing portion. Okay, let's give a round of applause for Sam. So we're going to move on to the signing portion of the evening, which will take place at the table to my right. Please feel free to have a copy of your book signed before you pay for it. So long as you visit the cash desk and see my friends at it, they'd be very happy about that. I will come by as well just to move some of the chairs to make things a little bit more accessible for people. But otherwise, thank you so much for everybody to be here tonight, both in person and online. Let's give another big thank you to Coby for being here to host. And thank you again to Anansi Press for helping make this evening a reality. And of course, another huge big thank you to Sam K MacKinnon. Thank you so much, everybody.